Hello and welcome to Material Girls, a pop culture podcast that uses critical theory to understand the zeitgeist. I'm Hannah McGregor.
And I'm Marcelle Cosman. And I love television.
I know this to be true about you.
I love television so much that I wanted to do another TV-focused episode.
And I say, why not?
So listen, I asked around and you're not going to believe our luck. Not only did I find a charming and intelligent guest, she's joining us to talk charmingly and intelligently about one of the greatest TV series of the 1990s, if not all time.
Wow. Is it by any chance Dr. Leigh Dyrda joining us to talk about the X-Files?
It is Dr. Leigh Dyrda. Leigh Dyrda, pronouns she, her, has in fact been heavily influenced by the X-Files, and not just in the haircut department. She cites the show's romantic angst, its underdog crusade for the truth, whatever that means, and its distinctly Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs grit as touchstones for her media sensibilities. Her research interests lie with EcoGothic, a field that probes the eerie overlap of ecocriticism and Gothic. Maybe it's a field fitting for someone obsessed with a show about alien human hybrids, monsters that defy taxonomical definition, and cancers courtesy of government microchips. Welcome to the show, Leigh.
Thanks, Marcelle. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Coach. Glad to be here.
Hi, Leigh. I immediately, just following that introduction, remembered this line from the X-Files that has truly stuck with me more than anything else in the show, which is Scully saying, nothing defies the rules of nature, just what we know about nature.
Oh, all right. I don't remember that one. That's great.
Yeah. It really stuck in my brain, this idea of is there a logical, comprehensible world that we have just not fully understood yet? Or is it inherently strange and unknowable? That influenced a youthful Hannah.
Hannah like that.
Yeah.
Oh, goody.
I like to think that Scully lives in all of our brains.
Oh,
yes.
I love that. That's so sexy.
True. Yeah. So before I ask the most important question of this episode, I just want to give a really important spoiler alert, because I can't control the two of these women and they will, who knows what they're going to talk about.
Whatever the hell we want.
Everything
and anything. So if you've never seen the X-Files and you think you really want to watch it from top to tail without any spoilers, you're just going to have to put this episode on the shelf. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, most important question, Hannah, Leigh, who did you have the hots for? Mulder, Scully, both, or neither?
I mean, it's both for me. It's I have the hots for them as a couple.
Yes.
Oh, okay. You want to be their princess.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a thing that exists outside of the discourse of a small group of friends in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a more universal thing?
I don't think
the princess is the third in a relationship who I believe sleeps at the foot of the bed.
It's an established couple, but you want to join the couple, so you want to be the princess.
But you want to join the couple and just be their princess.
Yeah, that's what I want. I would be happy to sleep at the foot of Mulder and Scully's bed.
I would be honored.
Yeah.
I feel alongside in The Mummy.
Rachel
Weisz.
Yeah, and Brendan Fraser in The Mummy. I feel Mulder and Scully are another sort of iconic bisexual route.
Hannah, you're just encapsulating all of the critical influences in my life at an important time.
Marcelle, what about you?
Both.
Both?
Both.
Well,
both. Yeah, definitely. I also want to be their princess. I want to sleep at the foot of their bed. I want them to argue about the truth in front of me and then hold me to let me know that everything's going to be okay.
I wonder if Mulder and Scully would think everything's going to be okay. I don't know, man.
No.
I don't think they would.
I don't think so.
They are not the people to go to for that particular comfort, I think.
No, that's why it's a fantasy.
Make a fantasy more accurate, Marcelle.
No, I won't. You can't make me. Hannah?
Just Scully for me.
Yeah.
I have never been much of a David Duchovny guy.
Yeah.
I think a young Hannah found Mulder stressful.
Yeah. That's real.
She's trying to do her job. Why are you being like this?
I mean, Mulder would be a very bad partner. Like, you can't just kind of ship Mulder on his own. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that would be an endless source of frustration.
I shipped them for sure.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
a big part of it was just because I loved Scully so much and wanted her to be happy.
Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
like, I want you to have whatever you want. But you know what? Instead, you got alien cancer
And an alien
Yeah.
baby.
and an alien baby. And that's so rude.
It's so rude.
It's time for Why This, Why Now, the segment that asks the materialist question. What are or were the historical, ideological, and material conditions for our object of study to become zeitgeisty?
This week, we're talking about The X-Files, an American science fiction drama television series created by Chris Carter. The X-Files premiered on the Fox network on September 10th, 1993, and lasted for 9 seasons. It won Emmy Awards, Golden Globe Awards, and eventually became, quote, the Fox network's top-rated program, end quote. That comes from an author called Soukup, who we will talk about later. Not unlike The Simpsons, The X-Files also expanded into movies and weird series shifts, as well as spin-offs. So for the sake of simplicity, we are concerning ourselves simply with the first 7 seasons of the show.
Classic David Duchovny seasons.
Yes, absolutely, precisely.
God, I'm immediately realizing how little I know about this series. I'm like, there were 2 seasons at the end that didn't have David Duchovny in them?
It's complicated.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Agent Doggett stepped in.
Who?
Well,
God.
Anyway. And we are going to look at materiality, I promise. But first, I really wanted to give Leigh, who is our resident expert, the opportunity to describe the X-Files for our listeners who may have missed out on this epic era of TV. Take it away, Leigh.
Okay, so again, spoiler alert, because this is a pretty high-level overview of the entire 7 seasons here. So the X-Files, you can kind of think about it as being organized around, the title, the X-Files. It's the unsolved cases at the FBI. And so when the show starts, we are with Fox Mulder, formerly a brilliant profiler with the FBI's Violent Crimes Unit. But he's become obsessed with the X-Files and the paranormal, mostly because his little sister Samantha was abducted when they were children, and she was never found. So he gets assigned a new partner in the pilot episode, Dana Scully, who's a medical doctor with the FBI. And she has been assigned to him to provide scientific rigor to the X-Files that the director feels is lacking. But however, in reality, in truth, she has been assigned, hoping that the X-Files can be debunked and Mulder can be pulled off the cases and they can be shut down forever. So that's where we start out. And the show, at least again for the 7 seasons, and to be honest, all of the seasons, revolves around 2 different types of cases, which are referred to as fans by either mytharc cases or monster of the week cases.
Classic.
Yeah, so monster of the week cases, first of those kind of one-off cases where Mulder and Scully are investigating some paranormal activity in rural America. But mytharc cases refer to episodes that are tied to the show's overarching plotline regarding a conspiracy about aliens and the US government, and that's a conspiracy to colonize Earth. And then Samantha, Mulder's sister, becomes part of that plotline.
Ooh.
Exciting.
Is Samantha still alive?
So actually the key question you want to be asking here, Hannah, is not, is Samantha alive? But did Chris Carter have any idea about whether Samantha would be alive or not when starting the show? Because that's a really good example of how the showrunner, Chris Carter, had like kind of a general sense of what was happening, but then, I mean, not really. Like, it's very opaque. There's huge jumps of logic that you have to kind of go through at times to follow the myth arc. And it's like a bit of a house of cards. Like, you're not really sure. Things kind of go back and forth. So let me give you a high-level overview of kind of the myth arc part, the conspiracy part, because that'll be important for us today.
Yes, please.
Okay, and let's keep in mind that I am condensing a lot of complicated information into like a small paragraph here. So aliens exist.
Okay.
They want to take over Earth.
Okay.
Classic.
They are going to infect all of us Earthlings with a virus called purity, which is a black gooey substance that's often called black oil in the series. Very interesting connections to kind of petroculture there.
Yeah.
And then if you become infected, you turn into an alien monster. And what kind of alien monster you turn into kind of depends on like where we are in the show, because they kind of play around with different types there. And who is going to help the alien colonists? Well, a faction within the US government, of course.
Of course.
And so this faction called the Syndicate is hiding the truth about aliens from US citizens. And they're running various medical tests and military tests as part of helping the aliens to get ready to colonize Earth. And then in secret, for their own purposes, they're trying to develop a vaccine to the virus that's called purity control.
What? Why would they be working with the aliens but also developing a vaccine? You know what? No spoilers.
They're not doing it for good reasons. Like it's to save themselves.
They never are.
No, they're the US government. They're evil. Except for Mulder and Scully, who are also US government, but not evil.
But they're good.
They're good US government.
That's right.
Yeah, very important. And then, of course, shipping. We've already touched on this a little bit. You cannot talk about the X-Files without talking about shipping. The X-Files was huge in terms of the origins of online fandom and shipping culture. X-Files, X-Philes.
No.
Yep. They were the first to use, let's call it cyberspace, to create virtual fan culture. Fan fiction was huge for the X-Files, PH Files, because Mulder and Scully had that classic will they, won't they, that the show teased for a really long time. But it felt different than other shows. Like their will they, won't they was really rooted in this kind of deep respect they had for each other, this common passion, this drive to find the truth. And it had this really like us against the world feeling that felt really unique to the show. So those things kind of separated the will they, won't they tension from other shows like that at the time.
Perfect summary. Perfect spoiler-free summary. 10 out of 10, Leigh. So, Marcelle.
Yeah.
What kind of material context, I mean, I guess I should say what additional material context should we be bringing in for our listeners?
Okay. That's a great question, Hannah. Thank you so much for asking it. So even though we recently aired an episode on The Simpsons, which very helpfully introduced younger listeners to the concept of the rerun.
Hugely, undoubtedly important for the X-Files.
Yes, absolutely. I also want to remind listeners about our previous episode about Twin Peaks, because in many ways, Twin Peaks was the blueprint for the X-Files, both in terms of that cult following, unique or unprecedented content, and also that experience that we might remember of planning your whole week around watching the show. Because if you missed that episode, you would have to wait until the summer and hopefully catch a rerun.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah. I remember that so clearly. There is one episode in one of the later seasons where this death fetishist that Mulder and Scully have imprisoned in season 2 gets out of jail. The episode's called Horizon, which is, I think, named after the reverend who is featured in that episode. And anyway, of course, because this death fetishist is obsessed with Scully, he takes her hostage in her own home. He's about to do terrible, terrible things to her.
No.
And yeah, it's very, very tense. And there's this scene where she has escaped from the closet and she's like broken free from her bonds and she's crawling along the floor to get to her gun. And he's like coming down the hallway and the whole thing is being shot in slow motion. And as I'm watching this on my VHS tape, suddenly it cuts out and then the Super Nintendo logo comes over because my brother turned on the Super Nintendo while my show was recording. And I had to wait until I got to school to find out what had happened. If Scully had survived the death fetishist. I was so angry. Like, that's got to be like 20 years, 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, no. A long time ago, friends.
And then
20
all
years.
of a sudden, do.
Yeah. So that just gives you a sense, younger listeners, of what it was like to watch.
It was
There
hard.
was no internet where I could go and say, oh my God, did Scully escape?
Oh, that's so stressful.
What years did the show run?
Well, it started in 93.
Okay, which means that I was 9 when it started.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely remember watching it. I watched it because my parents watched it.
Mm-hmm.
My recollection is that it aired on Sunday nights.
Some years.
And I think at either like 9 or 10 p.m. on Sundays. So it was a school night.
Mm-hmm.
And the deal that I remember my parents striking with us was you can stay up to watch it. 1, if your homework is all done.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, if you promise not to be a shithead tomorrow morning when we wake you up for school. Like, you're not allowed to be like, I'm tired. It's like, you may make the choice to stay up and watch the show, but then that's on you.
Yeah.
And so, like, I associate it very much, like, not just with family watching, but with the idea of, like, adult TV watching.
Oh, yeah.
Like, sort of having access to something that was, like, you know, content-wise was, like, scary and mysterious, but was also, like, in terms of the time of day that we were watching it, it was like, you're staying up to watch this grown-up show. And I believe that I personally stopped watching it after I saw an episode that was too scary for me and gave me nightmares.
Yeah.
Do you remember the episode, Hannah?
Well, so I have only the vaguest memories of it, but I described it to you. I was like, all I remember, it was definitely one of those like Monster of the Week episodes. And I remember that there was something about incest and something about like somebody being kept like under floorboards.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We know what episode that is.
And that was like what I had, but like I've never gone back and looked. But when I described that to you, Leigh, you were like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That episode's called Home.
Hey, Marcelle knows it. That episode is called Home. I cannot believe, Hannah, that was the episode that you watched. That episode was so disturbing that Fox pulled it from the rerun schedule and has only re-aired it one time on Halloween in 1999.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
That does make me feel better.
Yeah.
That like as a child, I was like, well, I don't like having seen that.
That's it for me.
And all of television was like, agreed.
Yeah.
Home is a spectacular episode. It is deeply disturbing. It plays on a lot of some of the key themes of the show, and we can return to talking about that maybe a little bit later.
That's a great idea. Okay, so we all agree the X-Files was important. It was important to us. It was important to our growing sense of ourselves as young adults. But we have to talk about the materiality of the show. And I don't want to be awkward, but I am. As a researcher, I have to do my due diligence here and acknowledge that a man helped me with my research.
Gross.
Ooh, I know. Was it my husband?
It was your husband, yes.
Marcelle was like, well, we have to ask Neil's permission for Leigh to be on the show first, obviously.
So listeners who love the lore of the Witch Please Productions era will be delighted to know that Leigh Dyrda is married to friend of the pod and guy with a film degree, Neil Barnholden. So Neil and I have lunch like often once or twice a week. And anyway, Neil recently taught a class about the X-Files. And I was like, hey, can you send me the reading that you gave your students?
Absolutely perfect. Marcelle.
Yes.
I do have to say that telling the listeners about our guest husband is maybe the least feminist thing that you've ever done.
You're not wrong.
How dare you bring a man into this?
It is true. It is absolutely true. But I just thought they'd be tickled to know.
Yeah,
you know?
Neil's very popular.
He
He's an
is.
important part of the lore.
Exactly. Anyway, okay, so here's the thing. Neil sent me this chapter by scholar Amanda Lotz, professor of communication studies and screen arts and cultures at the University of Michigan. And I am going to ask the two of you to read some quotations from it.
Marcelle, I know this is my first guest appearance on your show, but doesn't that usually happen in the next segment?
You are quite right, Leigh. It absolutely does, but I've been a little busy. And so I really had to go rogue with this one. I was like, how can I fill up the script with something else?
This can't be my ideas. I got none.
I don't have any ideas. So as penance for questioning me, you get to have the first quote.
Okay. Yes, that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. So listeners, for context, Lots here is explaining the development of television viewing. She writes, quote, "The major developments of 65 years of U.S. television explains the norms that produced a particular experience of television in each era," end quote. So like Taylor Swift, television also has eras.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Our object of study makes its appearance in the multi-channel transition era, starting in the 1980s. But to understand that era, we have to go back to the network era, which is the 1940s to the 80s. Okay, Leigh, please take it away.
Okay, I will. But I'm also going to note that this is the most Neil article I have ever heard of in this moment. Okay.
Okay, but can you tell us briefly what makes it a really Neil article?
Oh, I mean, it's about like the history of television. It's like how many arcane facts and like about the history of communications media can we embed? That's Neil right there.
Incredible.
Quote, "The network era of US television was the provenance of three substantial networks, NBC, CBS, and ABC, which were operated by relatively non-conglomerated corporations based in the business center of New York," end quote.
Hell yeah.
Perfect. Also the next one, please.
Quote, "In the network era, television was predominantly a non-portable domestic medium, with most homes owning just one set. Network programmers knew that the whole family commonly viewed television together, just like Hannah's family, and they consequently selected programs and designed a schedule likely to be acceptable to, although perhaps not most favored by, the widest range of viewers. A strategy the CBS Vice President of Programming, Paul Klein, described as, quote, least objectionable programming, end quote. This was the era of broadcasting, in which networks selected programs that would reach a heterogeneous mass culture, but still directed their address to the white middle class, end quote.
Wonderful. Thank you. Get it?
Broadcasting.
Broadcasting.
It's not just broadcasting, it's broadcasting.
Casting. The opposite of it is narrowcasting.
Which is what we do.
Yeah.
You're experiencing it, baby.
This is it. Niche casting. Hannah, could you please read the next one?
I shall. Quote, "The network era featured very specific terms of engagement for the audience, regardless of the broader distinctions in how the industry created that programming or how the business of television operated. Viewers grew accustomed to arbitrary norms of practice, many of which were established in radio, such as a limited range of genres, certain types of programming scheduled at particular times of day, the television season, and reruns. These unexceptional network-era conventions appeared natural and just how television is, to such a degree that altering these norms seemed unimaginable," end quote. I love this shit. This is what Lisa Giedelman calls media protocols, right? It's like you've got the technology itself, and then you've got all of the norms of use that develop around them. And those norms of use are like often just arbitrary or a function of like a particular history that like the media doesn't work that way anymore, but it used to. And so we're just going to keep doing it the way that it used to make sense.
Totally. Yes. So the reason I've asked you both to read quotes about the network era is that the early seasons of the X-Files viewing practices lined up with norms and viewing practices inherited from that network era, even though the show appears during the era that Lots calls the multi-channel transition era.
I guess this is what Lots was calling the, quote, arbitrary norms of practice, end quote. So kind of thinking about the types of genres, the programming that was kind of dependent on the times of day that it aired, how seasons were working and reruns, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, right? So that sense that I described of like, it's nighttime, this is an adult show, because adult shows have adult content and they play at nighttime at adult times. Like,
that's right.
Yeah, okay.
Grown-up TV.
All right, yeah, grown-up TV. And Fox, I guess, was a relatively new network in the 90s, but it was still a network.
Yes, precisely. So now we simply have to talk about the multi-channel transition. So I shall pass it on again to you, Leigh.
All right. So, quote, beginning in the 1980s, the television industry experienced 2 decades of gradual change. New technologies, including the remote control, video cassette recorder, and analog cable systems, expanded viewers' choice and control. Producers adjusted to government regulations that forced the networks to relinquish some of their control over the terms of program creation. Nascent cable channels and new broadcast networks added to viewers' content choices and eroded the dominance of ABC, CBS, and NBC, end quote.
Awesome.
Can I ask a question that's maybe embarrassing, but if I don't know, probably somebody listening doesn't know?
I love the idea of you embarrassing yourself, so please continue.
What's the difference between a cable channel and a broadcast network?
I'm going to take a guess. So I grew up on a farm and we didn't have cable. We couldn't get cable, but we did have an aerial that was on top of the house. And if we turned the aerial, you could get different channels. And I believe that the difference between a cable channel and a broadcast network is that broadcast you can get over these, not radio waves, obviously, but
it's functionally like radio.
Yes.
It's like if you've got the device, you can pick up this thing, hence broadcast.
exactly.
Whereas cable, you have to have like a special literal cable.
Yeah.
That is what is what it's based on. You have to have a literal cable. And okay, all right, that is helpful.
Yes.
That is helpful.
I'm sure that there's a smarter and more coherent way to explain it, but that's the best I can do.
That was good enough for
That
me.
makes sense.
Thank you.
What really strikes me about that quote you just read, Leigh, I love this. We like accidentally anticipated all of this theory via our initial conversation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But you described the experience of recording episodes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Were you the person in your household that watched the X-Files? So you
Yes,
were like,
I was the only person who watched the X-Files. And so, I was often doing homework or I was practicing my violin and I just had no time to watch it. So I would be
Mhm.
recording it. And I also wanted to rewatch some of the episodes. And
Mhm.
of course, you could watch them in less time because you could fast forward through the commercials,
That's right.
which everybody always
Yes.
forgets it was aired with commercials originally. Although, of course, the later reboots were not. They were for streaming.
okay. So we've got like sort of just via our experiences, a sense exactly of the way the X-Files bridged this transition from the broadcast, the like mode of watching that is like the family gathered around the television to watch an adult show because it's airing at adult time, to this sense of like you as an individual watcher can have developed your own personal taste. You can be recording the episodes and then watching them on your own time and like developing this sort of fanish relationship to it that's outside of the logics of broadcast.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing I love about that is it really kind of catches on to how the X-Files was a pretty risky choice for Fox, right? This is not
yeah.
a TV show that's meant to be consumed by whole families necessarily. And I think like it drew on genres that were not really popular, right? Like sci-fi, thriller, these were really kind of niche genres. It wasn't the kind of sit down and just kind of turn your brain off and watch TV as a family kind of moment. And even the casting choices were a bit risky, right? There's that famous story that Gillian Anderson has told in a couple of interviews, and I think has also been confirmed by Chris Carter, that the network was really pushing for different actor casting, particularly for Gillian Anderson.
I'll go back in time and fight them.
Oh, I know. And I mean, the casting turned out to be such a huge part of the show's appeal.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they really, at least what Gillian Anderson has said, is they wanted somebody who was more like Pamela Anderson and the kind of Baywatch idea,
That's
and
the
not
stupidest thing I've
X-Files.
ever heard.
It's very, very good that they did not
Yeah.
go in that direction.
I mean, no shit on Pamela Anderson.
No,
of
no,
course,
but
of
like-
course.
But it would
But
not
like-
have been right for the show, right? The casting
no,
is such
yeah.
a huge part of that.
CJ, which was Pamela Anderson's character on Baywatch, like CJ is not a medical doctor. She's a lifeguard. She saves lives in a way that involves a bathing suit. And Scully saves lives in a way that involves like a full medical gear and gloves
and a giant trench coat.
mask.
A giant,
And a gun.
giant
and
trench
a
coat.
gun.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so we've been talking about sort of the fan context, and we've already been introduced to the term the X-Files.
Files. Yes.
Files. So I feel like that's the other big thing, right? The other big like 90s context
Yeah, absolutely.
is like emergent internet fandom.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes. Totally. So to kind of summarize everything, like what Leigh was talking about at the beginning with the online fandom and shipping and how the X-Files really like introduced shipping. So the internet, the multi-channel transition, the leftovers of the network era, VCRs, remote controls, like all of this material context is working together to create a kind of perfect storm for the X-Files. And as you were just saying, Leigh, like it's also the content of the show itself, following from its spiritual older sister Twin Peaks, was also so niche, right? And should have in so many ways like not been as popular as it was.
Yeah.
But it was extremely popular.
It was extremely popular. Something you were saying really reminded me about a key aspect of the X-Files also is its sort of historical placement in terms of the history of technology.
Mm-hmm.
This show has to exist at the moment before smartphones and kind of like the nascent beginnings of the internet, right? Because it's drawing on that with its conspiracy theories and the sense that there are sort of small online communities that were digging for the truth. And Mulder kind of plugs into some of these communities through the Lone Gunmen, a trio of 3 characters who are sort of, they kind of stand in as Mulder's kind of like wingmen. They do a lot of research for him. They tease Mulder at one point that his theories are even wilder than theirs, but that is not, in fact, true. And so there's this moment where like fax machines and the beginning of the internet are such a key part of the X-Files. And so much of the action of the show could not take place in a world 10 years later, which is why the reboot feels so different, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. All of this context makes it feel so weird that the X-Files wasn't like Twin Peaks, a like quickly canceled, deeply niche fan property. Like 9 seasons.
Yeah, 9 seasons.
Yeah. If only we had a theory for why it was so popular.
Boo. Boo, boo. Bad transition, boo. In this segment, Marcelle is going to introduce us to a theoretical framework or something to help us think through the popularity of the X-Files.
I'll just come out and say it. Yes, shipping Mulder and Scully was really important for me on an episode-by-episode basis. But the conspiracy theory subplot that tied the whole thing together was why I cared enough to ship the characters in the first place.
That's so interesting. The mytharc.
The mytharc, yes. And so we're just going to blow right through this part about where you guys chime in about whether you were interested in the conspiracy. No, I'm going to ask quick yes or no question. Were you guys also interested in the mytharc?
I was more interested in the Monster of the Week at the time.
Yeah.
But that could have been because it was like a long running show and it aired weekly. And, you know, there wasn't that same sense of sort of urgency that there is with shows now when you stream them. And there's some sort of ongoing conspiracy or mystery, right? Where you can kind of watch them in quick succession. But now I like the mytharc episodes also.
Okay. Lovely. Wonderful.
I mean, I haven't gone back and watched it, but I will say in general, my experience as a viewer pre-streaming era was that I found any continuous arcs in shows stressful.
Okay.
Because that sense of like, what if I miss an episode or what if I don't remember a detail? There's no way of getting it back. There's no way of checking. I like really preferred self-contained episodes because they felt more soothing for the way I was primarily engaging with the medium.
Okay, awesome. Okay, listeners, similar to the episode of The Simpsons that we did, the article that I tracked down for this episode on the X-Files is relatively contemporaneous with the X-Files. So we'll be sort of stepping back in time a little bit to, I think, 2002. The article that we're going to draw on for the theory section is called Television Viewing as Vicarious Resistance, The X-Files and Conspiracy Discourse by Charles Soukup. And it was published in the Southern Communication Journal, yes, in 2002. Okay, wonderful. So given the publication date, it was probably written a year or so leading up to the May 2002 series finale, but it doesn't actually touch on the end of the show at all. So I'll just give a A quick TLDR, Soukup's thesis is that the X-Files allowed a predominantly upper middle class fan base to engage in what he calls vicarious resistance when watching the show. So let's get into it. Hannah, this time, can you please read the first quotation for me?
I shall. Quote, "The series follows the typically ambiguous and confusing structure of the conspiracy narrative." Burn. "Fundamentally, the conspiracy theory is a gripping, dramatic story with several key characteristics. Although many conspiracy narratives emphasize political institutions, for the conspiracy story to function, the conspirators simply must have access to power. In the conspiracy narrative, power and control are the primary goals of the conspirators, and all other purposes are illusory. Further, a malevolent and evil group, often based on real historical details, conspires for personal gain. At the center of the conspiracy story, a heroic individual gathers information as a detective in order to fight the vast network of evil conspirators. Finally, the narrative often lacks resolution." End quote.
Amazing.
Ooh, that makes me think so many thoughts.
I know.
I'm pocketing them.
Okay, good job. Good job. Thank you. But quick question. Does the narrative structure sound familiar? It does, yes. Good. Wonderful. Leigh, you have the next quotation.
Quote, "Like the conspiracy narratives of the Cold War, for example, the internal threat of communism in American institutions, the X-Files draws upon contextual conditions and prevailing ideologies in order to create meaning. In fact, upon deeper analysis, the contextual and conventional conditions of the text significantly restrict the superficial openness of the text. Particularly, the meanings of conspiracies in the X-Files are pieced together by the conventional expectations of television narratives, the narrative reading positions of the text, in other words, how the television show orients viewers' meaning-making, and the ideological conditions of meaning-making," end quote.
Okay, the contextual and conventional conditions of the text. What does that mean? What are the contextual and conventional conditions of the text?
What do you think?
Oh, a classic teacher moment. Why don't you tell me what you think that means? Okay, so we've been talking about some contextual conditions of television, right? In terms of like broadcast norms that became such embedded norms that people didn't question them. So I think like there's some sort of like, the logics of a serialized story, right? Of like, Monster of the Week versus mytharc, like what kinds of stories need to be wrapped up in a single episode versus which ones can be like not concluded. So we're talking like historical context, we're talking about like conventions of genre. But I think particularly what this seems to be saying to me, okay, the meanings of conspiracies are pieced together via the conventional expectations of television narratives.
I think we should talk about what an open text is in order to get into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
Yes.
Okay. So what's an open text? What's the openness of the text that these conventions and conditions are working against?
Yeah. So Soukup uses this term to describe the X-Files, quote, because its narrative is never resolved and the television show leaves much information unexplained, end quote.
Okay. It's not openness as in like freedom to do whatever you want. It's openness as in like non-closure.
Well, it is a little bit of both. But the way that the openness is built into the show's production techniques, it does in particular influence the way that the viewer is encouraged to draw their own conclusions in tandem with Mulder and Scully.
Okay.
So there's another quote that I think Leigh should read, and that I think will help bring us back to your question about the conventions and the context.
Okay, I think this is going to help. Quote, "The openness of the text places the viewer in the position of an investigator filling in the gaps of information. More specifically, in order to solve the mystery, viewers are encouraged to take on the positions or viewpoints of Mulder and Scully. The X-Files producers often use point-of-view shots, over-the-shoulder shots, and close-ups that place the viewer in the position of the characters. And so in a sense, the audience is led through the complex mystery by a sort of mediated tour guide. The conventions of television are often designed to foster perceived or imagined relationships between the viewer and the television character In the unique case of the X-Files, these conventions help foster particular meanings associated with conspiracies, end quote.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, too, one of the other pieces of context that might be missing here is the location in time in the 1990s. Because this is a post-Watergate era, this is very much a time when I think the average American is willing to believe that the government is hiding something, right? Like we know in the 90s that the American government gets involved in things and then lies about it. And so the fact that we have this as a kind of political context for the show, which is all about what is the government hiding. And then the actual production of the show encourages the viewer to like feel as though they're working alongside Mulder and Scully.
Even while it's actually doing very intentional things to lead you to read the episodes in particular ways.
Yes.
It's like leading you, but leading you in a direction that makes you feel like you are like also solving the mystery.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So just to jump in here, the show actually deliberately kind of calls back to some of those early conspiracy ideas and sort of the mythologization of American politics. Like, for example, Mulder's informant in season 1 is named Deep Throat, which is an obvious callback to the Watergate scandal. Like a lot of this is unfolding as well amidst the backdrop of the Clinton presidency, right? And so there were associated like, quote, scandals in that presidency as well. And so there was this idea that there was sort of this truth that could be uncovered and that they were trying to call back to these previous sort of conspiracy ideas to create this kind of milieu of what was going on in American politics at the time.
And like those sort of like Watergate narratives create these hero figures, right? These sort of like brave detectives who like get to the bottom of it. Like the truth is out there, it can be found, and it's the responsibility of individual citizens to like, you know, fight the man and find out the truth. So you can totally see why that would then become this like very alluring television watching experience, because we love an experience of passively consuming media that makes you feel like you did something.
Okay, hold on. We got to slow down because we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Hold that thought. So I think what you're naming, Hannah, is this feeling of watching the show as a kind of act of resistance, right? And so, Hannah, can you read this next quotation? Because I think that this will move us into the function of the conspiracy subplot.
Okay. Quote, although the X-Files may appear to be a resistive text, it has done little to change viewers' behavior toward the government. He says in 2002.
Yeah.
Essentially, the narrative structure and reading positions of the series allow upper middle class viewers to experience the pleasure of resisting the perceived corruption of the government. The X-Files draws upon prevailing distrustfulness of the government and allows viewers to play a resistive hero, end quote.
Wonderful. Thank you.
My friend Amy always says that the internet trained us all to be little detectives.
Yep, absolutely. Leigh, we got one more big one. Can you read this one for me, please?
Quote, in the opening credits sequence before every episode, on top of images of paranormal phenomena and Mulder and Scully in the midst of an investigation are the words, government denies knowledge.
Oh, classic.
From the beginning of the episode, the program suggests that the viewer can vicariously resist the government via the reading positions and viewpoints of Mulder and Scully. The truth Mulder and Scully are seeking is related to an insidious conspiracy within the government. Basically, the show is framed as a sort of white middle-class resistance to the government. Furthermore, Mulder and Scully provide ideal characters with which white middle-class men and women can identify. Both characters are attractive, successful, powerful, emotionally controlled, and desirable, end quote.
Perfect. Wonderful. And then we just need one more final blow to all of our young hearts from Hannah, please.
No, I'm loving this. I love ruining things. Quote, moreover, the series provides a relatively safe text for this playful resistance. By placing the governmental resistance in the realm of the fantastic and supernatural, the producers of The X-Files provide a resistive text somewhat removed from reality. If the show's narrative emphasized more realistic injustices, such as political campaign deception or racist police officers, the viewer would be pulled back into the oppressive reality of everyday American life. By emphasizing the supernatural, the show may allow some viewers to enter a realm of fantasy removed from the reality of oppression, end quote.
Bummer, huh?
I don't know if I agree with that premise about how fantasy functions.
Okay.
Can we have another segment where we dig down and actually talk about these ideas?
Yeah, I think so. But before we do that, I really want to tell you my thesis on this whole thing.
Boo.
Okay. Okay. I don't like it when I don't script it.
Well, I don't know about you, but now I want to believe that Marcelle has a thesis for us.
Sometimes living in our belligerently post-truth world, it's hard to believe that there was ever a time when informed American citizens believed they could trust their government. And to be clear, the sinister global manipulations of Western governments like the US, Canada, and England have been well documented. But in the 1990s, resistance felt urgent rather than simply the basic modus operandi of being alive. As a television program, The X-Files didn't feel like science fiction or fantasy. It instilled in viewers like me a sense that we were learning how to question everything. Like Soukup describes, the experience of watching the show itself felt resistant. But the truth is that it was an expertly designed fantasy that interpolated viewers and made us feel like we were resisting government control when we were, in fact, just falling in love with propaganda. I guess ACAB includes Mulder and Scully? In this essay, I will...
Okay, hold up. We really need to talk about this show being set in the pre-post-truth age, because that is really what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it is the pre-post-truth age.
It really is.
Because Mulder and Scully, there is some sense that if they can continue on their quest for the truth, right? And what the truth is sort of variously defined throughout the show, that they will be held to account, right? They being this sort of shadowy government conglomerate.
Yes.
Yeah, if we can gather evidence and prove,
that's right.
If we can get it on tape.
Yeah.
That you're doing what we think you're doing,
yes,
there will be sort of unclear consequences.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
It's like the truth itself is the liberatory power, which is a thing that we have realized politically is simply not the case.
Yes.
But it kind of was for a minute after Watergate.
Yeah, and the show is set in that minute, right? Where there's this idea that people could be held to account, that there was something to uncover. Of course, now, when the president openly lies and, government agencies spread mistrust and conspiracy theories, what is even this objective truth that Mulder and Scully are looking for? Does it even exist? And even in the reboot, which is, again, to get on my soapbox, one of the reasons I don't love talking about the reboot is it feels completely different.
I don't think I knew there was a reboot.
Yeah. So there was a reboot. Unfortunately, they got Chris Carter as the showrunner again. But the thing is when you come on to a show now and start talking about conspiracy theories, you sound like you're aligned with sort of right-wing conspiracy networks, right?
Yeah.
And even one of the people who features in one of the early reboot seasons, and again, I don't want to get talking about it because I barely remember them because I only watched them once in horror, is actually a right-wing media personality who ends up sort of being right about some things because, of course, he's spouting off about conspiracy theories that turn out to be true. And I mean, look at all the concepts that are in the X-Files when it comes to conspiracies: vaccines, pregnancies, abortion and fetal harvesting. These are all things that have become hugely co-opted by the political right. And so the show feels completely different if you take it out of the 90s.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I also feel this claim that Soukup makes that fantasy or the supernatural moves the realm of critique of the government out of sort of the real world into a sort of hypothetical other world. I can see the way that seemed to be how it's functioning politically in 2002.
Yeah.
Like, I get why that was the perspective at the moment. I think that isn't really upheld by like the historical function of fantasy and like the allegorical role that fantasy plays. Like, I think we've got lots of examples of like people using fantasy or science fiction as a way to like grapple with the realities of the world. Like, I think that's often what it's doing. But also that question of sort of what falls into the realm of quote unquote legitimate political discourse, like police brutality, versus what is like absurd and supernatural and clearly in the realm of conspiracy, like aliens exist, has collapsed in the past 2 decades.
Totally. Yes. Yes, for sure. Yeah. I do take your point, Hannah, about the value and function of science fiction and fantasy, but I think where Soukup's argument about the X-Files is very helpful is that it is a show that is supposed to be about uncovering the truth of the real world, or at least that's how like viewers would have been feeling about it. And so if the truth that's being uncovered is that actually aliens are real and the government is hiding it, as opposed to the government is run by fascists who are like racist and trying to undo democracy, like the stakes are totally different, right?
Very different.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
And Marcelle, just to pick up on what you're saying, one of the conspiracy theories that the show calls back to constantly is that aliens landed in the United States in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, right? So Roswell, New Mexico is featured many times in the show. They love going out to the desert at various moments, and like Mulder breaks into all sorts of secure facilities over the course of the show and with a devil-may-care attitude. And even that, right? That feels really dated now to think about 1947 and like there's a secret alien landing and that's the big secret that the government is hiding. I mean, that feels so almost innocent compared to, very quaint, right? Compared to some of the issues that we're dealing with now.
It is so true. It's like, oh man, that like deep, dark conspiracy at the heart of this show is actually so much less terrifying than just the real world.
Yes, in reality.
Exactly.
Like, the reality of like global late capitalism and authoritarianism is so much grimmer.
So much grimmer.
Like, do you guys remember, I can't even remember how long ago it was now, like a couple of years ago, it was like revealed that, oh, actually aliens do exist and we do have evidence for that. And then shortly after it was like, oh no, actually that was debunked, that person, and that we don't believe that person. And none of that was news. It was neither big news when it was like, surprise, actually this was all true, nor was it news when it was like, hey, actually that person is incorrect. It was like it just didn't happen because there were too many other things that all of our brains were melting about.
I don't even remember that.
I do remember it was like a guy testified to set, like a former government official like testified in front of Senate being like, we have ample material evidence of the existence of aliens. And then a bunch of other people were like, that guy's famously crazy.
That guy was Mulder.
It was Fox fucking Mulder is who it was. They're like, that's David Duchovny.
That's literally David Duchovny. He is famous. Okay, so there is a connection here that I think is super interesting, which is when you look at primary conspiracies that are happening in, the US right now, a lot of the conspiracy discourse is about reproduction. Right? It is about this like central anxiety about the maintenance of the white nation via the fertility and reproduction of white women having more white babies. And that, so replacement theory, anxiety about immigration, and even the more extreme conspiracy theories about like stem cells and, terrible things being done, control over abortion rights, right? Like all of this tangles into this way that like a certain through line of conspiracy comes back to this like obsession over maintaining the purity of the white female body. It's a thing in the show too,
oh
isn't
my
it?
God, yes. So this is the perfect moment for us to talk about this show's obsession with pregnancy, because it is It is everywhere.
This is, I think, where my mom stopped watching the show.
Oh, yeah.
Is when Scully got cancer, because my mom had cancer. And I think that was the point where she was like, well, this show's a bummer now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm out. Well, and okay, so you just mentioned home as well. Like there's so many even Monster of the Week episodes that look at sort of the narrative of the unnatural pregnancy, right? So in home, it's again, content warning on this one. It's in the South. It's a family who have been living on their plantation since the Civil War. It's 3 brothers, and their mother has no arms and legs and is being kept underneath the bed. And then they are having sex with her, and she produces a fetus that is like so genetically abnormal that the brothers like take it and leave it in a field. And then that's when Mulder and Scully are called out. And so, like obviously a lot to do with pregnancy there. But there's other episodes, like there's one called Terms of Endearment, which is about fathering demon babies. There is an episode in season 5 called The Postmodern Prometheus that is sort of done up to look like, like Hammer horror, like with black and white, call back to kind of the 50s. But it's a rape narrative. It's about this person with physical disfigurement who is drugging and raping women. But he's played off as sort of like an anti-hero. So, there's like a lot of different narratives, even in the Monster of the Week episodes, to do with the idea of rape and pregnancy. But this is really a key part of the myth arc. So even Scully's abduction in season 2, Scully is taken by aliens. And the reason that Scully is taken by aliens is because Gillian Anderson was pregnant.
Oh.
And so they needed to write her off of the show.
Oh, so this is like functions at multiple narrative levels.
Yeah. So if you see like beginning season 2, Gillian Anderson is like artfully draped, like her lab coat is like artfully draped over her belly and stuff.
Always standing behind a
yeah,
couch.
exactly. Holding things, right? And so, I mean, poor Gillian Anderson was like, I don't know, 2 days postpartum lying in the hospital bed in the episode One Breath from season 2 because, she'd been rescued or like discovered in the hospital really is and Mulder freaks out saying, who brought her here? No one brought her here, right? It's part of the big conspiracy. And she just appears at the hospital after her abduction. And so that kind of kicks off all of this stuff. And then as a result of Scully's abduction, she's given a chip in her neck, like a microchip, which is later connected to her nasopharyngeal cancer. And also her ova are harvested. And so, yeah, like not a great abduction experience. And Scully joins a group called MUFON. It stands for the Mutual UFO Network. And it's a group of women who have all had similar abduction experiences. And it's really coded as like a rape survivor group, really. Mulder even refers to one of the doctors involved with all of this as a medical rapist at one point. And so like all of these kind of things that are going together here, like loss of bodily autonomy, violation, abduction, pregnancy. Scully finds out she has a secret daughter in season 5 that was made out of her harvested ova. Yeah. And then later dies because her daughter is some sort of alien human hybrid.
This show's wild.
That's before she even gets pregnant in season 7, which is, a whole other thing. So there's a lot going on in the show with the way that pregnancy and women's bodies are part of this kind of alien conspiracy, and they are white women's bodies.
What do you make of the show's obsession with like sanctity and penetration or invasion of women's bodies in particular?
Okay, great question. I make of this that it's very tied to the colonization narrative, right? So when you have colonization happening, you have concerns about eugenics and genetics, and
this is the colonization by the aliens.
Yeah, right? Because
like we're being colonized, and so they are doing things to our women. They are producing impure babies.
Yeah, like purposefully, right? Because part of the experimentation that's happening with women is to try to create alien human hybrids to aid in colonization. It's part of the syndicate's big plot, but also like I think that the syndicate themselves will become alien human hybrids, and then everybody else will be killed. It's very unclear, as I was saying at points, about what exactly, is happening. But maybe there's probably listeners out there who are cursing me right now, being like, it's so clear, you just don't understand. But I think it is part of the show's colonization narrative. It's about talking about women's bodies as being sort of vessels, and a lot of concern around the purity of pregnancies, which of course is, connected to the name of the vaccine, purity control that they're trying to create to get away from alien human hybrid babies.
Oh boy.
Oh, that is so interesting as a post World War II, post Cold War, sort of post dismantling of the British Empire, right? We've got all of these anxieties about emergent multicultural societies and how do we manage this. Again, I very much think of the political moment that we're in as emerging in part from that sort of anxiety of the colonized arriving in the imperial centers.
Yes, very much.
And this sense of no, you were supposed to stay in the colonies where we controlled you and your labor.
Yes.
And instead you have come here, and that is, we see that playing out with a sort of anti-immigrant discourse and the sort of anti-immigrant violence in our contemporary political moment. But this show as using conspiracy as a way to work through that anxiety, in retrospect feels not even prescient, formative of our modern political consciousness.
I think it is formative. The show had a lot to do with sort of embedding the idea of that the government lies, that it's normal to be paranoid about your government, that we should be concerned about, and again, I'm using big quotation marks here, the purity of white women's bodies and how the bodies of colonized women are part of sort of this larger imperial project. I think it has a lot to do with kind of making those ideas mainstream. And yeah, I mean, part of the whole colonization narrative as well is that the members of the syndicate have to give up members of their own families to medical experimentation, which is where Mulder's sister comes in.
Samantha.
Yeah, Samantha comes in order to kind of bind these government agency to the alien colonizers, right? As we have your people kind of thing, like a hostage situation almost. But it's more complicated than that, really, because they're part of the whole conspiracy together. And so it really is about sort of how do you participate in your own colonization and anxieties around that, I think.
Material Girls is a Witch Please production and is distributed by Acast. If you want to uncover the truth, though, you can unravel the clues at our website, ohwitchplease.ca, where you'll find past episodes, transcripts, and reading lists full of clues. Don't forget to throw the government off your scent by ordering our merch, and piece it all together by checking out our 2 other shows, Gender Playground, a podcast about gender-affirming care for kids, and Making Worlds, a video podcast about sci-fi fantasy and the radical power of imagining otherwise.
If you're ready to join the secret society of truth seekers, subscribe to our excellent newsletter via ghost.io or the pretty sus substack.com/ohwitchplease. Perhaps you'll choose to go all in at patreon.com/ohwitchplease, where you'll commit yourself to that exquisite bonus content the government doesn't want you to see. Speaking of the government, we're also on Instagram and YouTube.
Our increasingly unhinged show is produced by Hannah Rehak, aka Coach. Thanks to the whole Witch Please Productions crew: Gabby Iori, Zoe Mix, Malika Gumpankum, and Ruth Ormiston. And thanks, as always, to Auto Syndicate for the use of our theme song, Shopping Mall.
At the end of every episode, we will thank all of our new Patreon supporters and every member who has boosted their tier. The truth is out there. Our enormous gratitude goes out to Monks Vet, Emma P., Darcy H., B., Catherine K., Allegra P., Serafina U., LL, Rosie S., Eric, Anjoli A., Meg C., Marala E., M, Jennifer, and Jessica D. We'll be back next week with an episode of Material Concerns. But until then,
later, Federal Bureau of Investigators.